Today is Friday, February 27th, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. Hillary Clinton faces a grilling at a hearing on the Epstein files. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can always email us as well. We enjoy hearing from you because we're so glad you're here with us, getting through the news of the day. We're here bright and early every weekday morning. And with me today, CBN's Trey Goins-Phillips, and a lot to get to as always. On the focus story, the Iranian government is holding the bodies of slain protesters hostage for cash.
We spoke to somebody who knows what's going on the ground, and she called it brutality to the nth degree. So we'll get into the details of the atrocities happening in Iran here in a minute.
All right, those details coming right up momentarily. Also coming up on the main thing, are Israelis hostile to Christians? Those claims have been circulating online. We go inside the claims and the reality coming up on the main thing. All right, want to tell you about our sponsor of this podcast, Christian Solidarity International. And we've been talking about the levels of persecution. They're not going down, and I don't think you can expect levels of persecution to go down anytime soon. I think the Bible is pretty clear on the promise that as long as we're on this side of eternity in a sinful and broken world, people who aren't Christians are going to persecute Christians. This is just one of the things that's promised to us as a reality of living in a broken and fallen world. And in some places, it's really more hostile than others, places like Nigeria. And as Christians, we're called in places like Hebrews 13 to come alongside persecuted believers and help them. And that is exactly what our partners at Christian Solidarity International, CSI, what they're doing. They have been building these relationships for decades. They are there providing immediate needs. They're providing spiritual needs, physical needs. They're on the ground, and they're there for the long haul. They are going to be with these pastors who are in turn helping communities of believers as they're getting dispersed from their homes and all sorts of horrors that are unfolding, trafficking, things of this nature. So they're out there working. They're trying to rescue people from things like trafficking. They are trying to help people who've lost their homes or have had family members killed. They are there on the ground helping. And if you feel led to get involved and to help out with that, you can go to csi-usa.org, csi-usa.org. Walk alongside Christians who are being persecuted for simply believing in Jesus. csi-usa.org. And we're going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. And Hillary Clinton faced a grilling in an ongoing Epstein probe, and she said she doesn't recall ever even meeting him. She testified before the House Oversight Committee yesterday, insisting she has no memory of ever encountering Jeffrey Epstein and denied any knowledge of his criminal activity. She had prepared remarks, and she said and accused Republicans of staging a, quote, fishing expedition to distract from President Donald Trump. She argued she has no knowledge that would help the investigation. She stated she never flew on Epstein's plane or visited his properties, and said she was horrified by what later emerged about his trafficking crimes. The hearing was actually paused at one point during the afternoon as Representative Lauren Boebert took an unauthorized photo of Clinton and sent it to conservative influencer Benny Johnson. And mortgage rates dipped below 6%, a psychological break that could jolt a frozen housing market. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate has fallen to 5.98%. According to Freddie Mac, that's the first time it's dropped below 6% since September 2022. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And anyone looking for a house right now, probably quite aware that I don't know if you've been it's one of my pastimes. Even when I'm not looking to buy a house, I'll just kind of browse Zillow and see what's going on around the neighborhood and what houses are going for, how many are, it's just one of those things that I do. I don't know if you do the same thing, Trey, but there's not a lot of houses they're starting to pop up. I've seen a few in my neighborhood, in my area, but it's been really quiet over the past few months, maybe even years. as far as sales going, but I'm starting to see them pop up now. And I'm wondering if people are starting to sense, that the prices are so high and stuff. I'm wondering if they're sensing they're about to come down. And so people are trying to like capitalize on that. I don't know what you're saying, but I know those rates coming down is certainly going to help more people start saying, hey, we gotta hurry up and get our house on the market.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, here in Central Virginia, we've had similar things happening. Like, not a lot of houses come up for sale, and then the occasional one does. And what's curious is that it then sits on the market for a long time, right? Because the prices are so high currently. So we'll see what ends up happening with these rate changes. I think it'll be interesting to see. Trump has promised a wonderful. Well, he says the economy is wonderful right now, and promises the economy will continue to be wonderful. I mean, that's what you do at a State of the Union address. So I'm not at all criticizing Trump for doing that. It doesn't matter whether you have an R or a D behind your name. That's what you do during a State of the Union. So, but it'll be interesting to see as the economy continues to churn on and rates change and different developments happen, especially internationally, diplomatically. What's going to happen with Iran? I know that's something we're going to talk about here in a minute. What's going on there on the ground, but what ultimately happens with the U.S. as regards to Iran, if there's ever any sort of military intervention we choose to take, that, of course, is going to have an impact on our economy. So all of this kind of works together. So it'll be interesting to see in the days, weeks, and months ahead how the housing market, among other things, kind of shapes out.
Yeah. And just as a side note, one of my other favorite hobbies, and I think my mom enjoys doing this as well. Yeah. But there's a really funny phenomenon that happens. If you ever notice when you're searching for houses, you get two kinds of kind of listings. There's one that clearly they spent time, hired somebody to do the photos. It looks as good as it can possibly look. And then there's the people that are just like, you know what? I'm just taking a picture as is. And like the bed's not made. There's somebody in the background like vacuuming or something. That just cracks me up. The bad real estate photos. It's just funny.
The ones that are the most curious to me are the ones that are like slightly off center, dark, and taken with a 2004 Nokia. It's like, I don't understand. Like, how is it that this is the picture? You're like, you know what? That's the one. Put it on the listing.
Yeah. Or like they zoom in on the toilet or something. And you're like, I assumed it had a toilet. I mean, you didn't have to confirm it for me, but yeah.
But that is part of the fun.
Yeah, it is part of the fun. So, but anyway, hopefully we'll see if the housing market gets going. With the rates dipping down a little bit. We're going to go to the focus story now. And as I mentioned at the top, the Iranian government they are holding the bodies of some of these protesters and doing it for cash. Really nefarious sounding stuff here. So what's the latest inside Iran as these protests continue?
Yeah, so we have some new reporting at CBN News from Chuck Holton that's really detailing the exact situation going on in Iran, and it's heartbreaking. It's devastating to see what's happening. So the anti-government protests, they started in early January. They've actually erupted again now across universities in several major cities in Iran. Human rights groups are saying now that thousands from January to now have been killed in these clashes. Some estimates rising to about 12,000 people shot by the Ayatollah's security forces as the people continue to demand freedom from Ayatollah Khamenei and his oppressive rule. So refugees that we actually interviewed in our media say that the violence and repression is so severe that many are fleeing just so that they can stay alive. Now, of course, a lot of them, that makes sense, right? People are leaving, but a lot of them actually don't want to leave. They want to stay and they want to save their country, but they're seeing no other option but to flee. And some of that is because of what the Iranian government, as you mentioned just at the top of this conversation, Dan, what the Iranian government is doing to the bodies of the hostages.
And how is Iran responding to the ongoing protests here?
Yeah, so this is, I think, one of the most heartbreaking pieces to this story. It's what was described, what I said at the beginning was brutality to the nth degree. We actually spoke with Lily Ritchie. She's one of the directors at Iran Alive Ministries. They work to disseminate the gospel actually through technology in the country of Iran. Lily is from Tehran originally. That's where she was born. She was born to a nominally Muslim family, and then she ultimately later, praise the Lord, she came to faith in Jesus. But she's hearing from people on the ground that are saying the government is charging so-called bullet fees. It's just blood money. Iranian dictator Khamenei and his regime is requiring from families who are wanting back the bodies of their loved ones who were murdered while protesting. Lily recalled to us a Christian father who recently called into the ministry, and he told the organization that the regime brutally killed his 20-year-old son. And Lily said when the father went to get his son's body, the government, were asking for a ransom per bullet that was used to kill him. 2 bullets were used on his head and 1 was used on his leg. They were asking somewhere around $10,000 to return the body. And of course, she said he was grieving and said to the government, we don't have anything. We have no money. That's part of what has catalyzed a lot of these protests, the economic collapse. Most people in Iran have no money. So he said nobody has any money to get food on their table, let alone pay the government hefty fees to get back the bodies of people who have been murdered and slain in the streets. So it's disgusting and deplorable what's happening right now in Iran.
And what's the U.S. response been to this?
Yeah, so of course, as we've covered and talked about, tensions between the United States and Iran are growing as nuclear talks have stalled yet again, and the U.S. is increasing military presence in that region, sending more and more military warcraft in that direction. Now, nothing definitively has been said. Even President Trump, during his State of the Union address Monday, indicated, "Hey, I would rather have a peaceful diplomatic agreement where we can come to the table, discuss this." And be ensured as an international community that Iran is not going to seek a nuclear weapon. Now, of course, with dictator Ayatollah Khamenei at the head, I don't know that you can necessarily trust what the Iranian government is saying, and that is kind of the quagmire that we have found ourselves in, right? So Trump wants a diplomatic agreement, but of course is readying for the possibility that there may not be a diplomatic agreement if the Ayatollah refuses to come to the table. So all of that to say, tensions between Iran, the U.S., and of course our chief ally, Israel, in the Middle East region, all of this is kind of coming to a head right now.
Well, and the problem behind all of this is that you have a regime here who views the West, who views America, who views Israel as the great Satan and the little Satan.
Yeah.
They want to wipe Israel off the map. They would love nothing more than to see America destroyed. So that is the operating kind of MO for Iran in general, and not the people of Iran. I mean, we see a difference there. But this regime here, they want to destroy the West. So it's very difficult to have any good faith discussions on any sort of peace when that's what they want to do. They just know that they're in a weaker position right now. So there's nothing they can do about it, really, other than try to buy time and stall and try to build their nukes. And so that's all they're trying to do. So you're not going to have a good faith conversation with them, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight, too, one of the things that Lily Ritchie told us in this most recent interview, which you can watch our full conversation on the CBN News YouTube channel. But she's also told us in the past, is as somebody who came from Iran, born in Tehran to a Muslim family before ultimately coming to Christ, she said most Iranians do not at all feel the way the Ayatollah's regime feels. In fact, many of them are victims of the Ayatollah's regime, as these protests have made, incredibly obvious. Many of them are allies to Israel. They see Israel as a friend. And of course, many of them, too, see the United States as an ally, as people that they find camaraderie with. So this is not a criticism or a condemnation of the Iranian people. This is a criticism and a condemnation of the Ayatollah's brutal regime. And I think that distinction that you made, Dan, is really important. Lily also talked about the number of Christians that their ministry has heard of who are coming to Christ, and we've covered this extensively at CBN, through visions and dreams. It's incredible to see the way the Lord is using dreams to reach a people group in the Middle East. And Lily actually even went on to say that she believes that the reason that all of this conflict exists is because the Lord wants to use Iran as an epicenter to spread the gospel of Christ throughout the Middle East. And Satan is doing all that he can to thwart that. But she was encouraged to say, ultimately, Satan, as we know as believers, is not going to succeed in his efforts to thwart the spread of the gospel. It's going to spread regardless of Satan's efforts.
Yeah, amen to that. And, we need to be praying, of course, for more people's eyes to be opened in that area, but ultimately for President Trump and for other leaders around the world and how they navigate this, that hopefully we can come to a peaceful resolution and there doesn't have to be more lives lost and uprisings and all of these horrible things that are going on right now, that some sanity can prevail because the majority of people do want to just get along and live their lives. And unfortunately, you have these radicals who have other agendas and very radical agendas, including wiping countries off the face of the earth. So important update there. Appreciate you bringing it to the podcast today. And we are going to go to the main thing now. And this one's also related to Israel. There's a narrative going around, you may have seen it online, that somehow Israel is more hostile towards Christians than even some Arab nations and some Muslim nations. So what's the truth here? Well, CBN's Julie Stahl, Paul Petit were joined by Melissa Francis to discuss the reality on that from the ground, from Israel. That's today's main thing.
You've been here 3 times since the summer. What have you experienced?
Well, certainly not anything that's being described there. And to your point, yes, I've been here plenty of times, and I haven't experienced any of that. Going to those particular places here in Jerusalem, particularly, and everywhere, it's pretty much it's open. And I don't know where Tucker and Candace, particularly anybody on the right now, is coming from, because the persecution they described. There's 1,000 pastors here just last winter. So if there's real persecution, you'd think we would see it. And of course, the Jerusalem Bureau here in the Middle East has been here for decades. You've lived here for over 10 years. What's been your experience?
Yeah, things happen here, that's for sure. It's not condoned. In general, it's not condoned at all. There was an attack of vandalism in the cemetery on Mount Zion and by a few Jewish students. And a huge group of Jewish people showed up to say, no, this isn't us. We're, Israelis. This is not us. We don't do this. There's other things, plenty of other things where the Christians are the most highly educated part of the Israeli society. So, and those are Arab Christians. Mm-hmm. So it's really not accurate to say that Christians are persecuted here. Okay, they're a minority, and things happen, but that happens everywhere.
Do you think it's a selective interviewing? In other words, we're going to pick people to be on our show like Tucker does for this, or is he getting a general consensus?
Well, I think, he didn't even stay in Israel, so he didn't even interview people here. He didn't go to Nazareth. He didn't go to the Galilee. He didn't interview our friend Shadi Khalul, who's an Aramaic Christian, and who wanted to tour him around, and he never answered. So I think there's a lot of misinformation here. But Paul, you interviewed somebody who was right there with the Mike Huckabee interview.
Yeah, actually I interviewed Melissa Francis, and Melissa was out here promoting her new film, The Prophet, which is going to be coming out in the United States in March. And she's also a journalist and an actor as well. And she was the one who actually brokered this interview, which President Trump wanted Carlson to come out here to try to quiet the conservative bend on anti-Israel. And it was interesting because she told me what went on in there, and sort of the feeling is how this all came to be. Let's take a look at the video. So Tucker Carlson recently had an interview with Mike Huckabee at the airport. Didn't last very long. Understand you were instrumental in bringing that together.
I was having lunch with Tucker, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was showing him pictures from Israel. And he said, God, I'd love to go. And I said, let's go. You should come. And he said, I don't know. There's been a lot of tension. I'm not sure I would be welcome. It ended up being at the airport for whatever reason. I don't know. And I'll just say, it was fascinating. It was a lot, Tucker asked a lot of questions that I know Americans are asking. And, Ambassador Huckabee really corrected him on things that he's heard Tucker say that just aren't accurate about how Christians are treated here in Israel. It was tense at times, for sure. But hopefully, the president wanted it to kind of turn down the heat. I'm not sure that was achieved. Maybe it was, but there you go. I know that on the way out, he talked about, that he was detained at the airport. I would just say on my way in, my luggage was dumped out. They went through my passport. I always get pulled into the room that he's talked about. I don't know what that's about. I think it's about a country that has people come in and blow stuff up.
Now, since then, Julie, videos come out from the airport showing Tucker Carlson in this so-called detainment area where he smiles and takes a picture with one of the airport workers. And the Israel envoy has said that, this did not happen. It's nothing but what may typically happen when you come to a country like Israel, where they may question you, ask you what your intentions are, or what did you do while you were here?
Yeah, I know. And he was in the VIP lounge. I've never been in the VIP lounge.
That's a whole other issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I just really want to say, Tucker, you're a journalist. Do your research. Look, come here and get out of the airport and interview Christians that live here, not just on the other side of the Jordan, like he did in his long piece. Interview the Christians who live in Nazareth. This year, Israel invested a huge amount of money in Christmas in Nazareth. Does that sound like it's anti-Christian? No. Things do happen. We know that, but it's just not right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were confused as why would you go to the airport, do the interview, then fly right back out? If really the topic of what you're trying to do is Christian persecution, here in Israel, then, go and see if that's actually happening. So I did talk to Melissa, and I wanted to know when this piece was going to air. She doesn't know yet. She couldn't go into the details, unfortunately, of what was discussed, other than to say it got tense at moments. But she did say that for the interview to take place, Huckabee demanded that it be shown in its entirety, no edits. This way you can sort of create your own narrative. Yeah. And from that, I guess the public could decide for themselves. No air date yet, but it's going to be interesting because I think Tucker Carlson certainly, as you know, is going to meet his match with Mike Huckabee, two very good people when it comes to debate.
All right, appreciate that conversation there. And we're going to have time on the podcast today for one last thing.
Today we are looking at Hebrews 4:12. It says, "For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart."
Yeah, I love that verse. It reminds us that, hey, when you are trying to talk to somebody about God, that you do not have to have fancy analogies and incredible speech and all these wonderful words of wisdom. Just share the word of God. It will do the rest. That's where we're going to leave it this week on the Quick Start podcast. As always, get on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here on Monday.